Christmas lights twinkled across the living room, their glow soft against the frosted windows. Laughter filled the air, but I couldn't join in. My bones ached from years of hard work. Yet what hurt most was not my age, it was the silence. The way my own children spoke around me, never to me. I sat quietly in the armchair they had pushed into the corner, sipping lukewarm cocoa, when my 8-year-old granddaughter slipped onto my lap. Her breath tickled my ear as she whispered words that froze my heart. "Grandpa, they're going to leave you at a nursing home tonight." I looked into her wide, innocent eyes. She wasn't joking. Children don't lie about things like that. She had overheard something meant to be hidden. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. I just nodded. I even managed to smile, because what my sweet granddaughter didn't know was that I already had my own plan, and that plan was going to change everything. Before I tell you what happened, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment below, because this is a story of betrayal, revenge, and a Christmas no one in my family will ever forget. Years ago, Christmas meant joy. It meant Ellen's cinnamon rolls baking in the oven, the sound of my children waking up early to tear through wrapping paper, and the warmth of a family built on love. Ellen, my late wife, used to say Christmas was the heartbeat of the year. She was the glue that held us together. But after she passed, something changed. My children grew distant, colder. They spoke more about inheritance than memories, more about money than family. I ignored it at first, hoping grief had hardened them temporarily. Still, I gave everything. When my son's business nearly collapsed, I mortgaged the house to save him. When my daughter complained about bills, I paid them without question. Every penny I had earned in 40 years of backbreaking work went toward their comfort. And yet, here I was, at Christmas, being whispered to by the only one who still saw me with love, my granddaughter, warning me that my own flesh and blood planned to discard me like yesterday's trash. The night moved on, filled with cheerful voices that felt like daggers to my ears. I watched my son and his wife exchange glances. They thought I didn't notice, but I did. When the clock struck 9, my son cleared his throat. "Dad, after dinner we thought maybe we could take you for a drive, show you something nice." His smile was too polished, too forced. My granddaughter squeezed my hand tighter. I just nodded. "That sounds fine, son." Inside, my rage simmered. They thought they could decide my future. They thought I was helpless. But the truth was, I had already taken steps that would make this Christmas the one they would never forget. Because I had been preparing for this moment long before tonight. And just as I reached for my coat to follow them, the front door opened, and everything shifted. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of icy December air. My daughter walked in, her designer coat still dusted with snow, her husband following with that smug look he always wore. They carried shopping bags, laughing too loudly, their joy dripping with the kind of arrogance that only comes from believing you're in control. I stayed seated, calm, as though nothing was wrong. My granddaughter still clung to me, her small fingers wrapped tight around mine. She didn't want me to go anywhere with them, and truth be told, neither did I. They thought tonight was about their plan. What they didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this Christmas for weeks. 3 months earlier, I'd overheard them whispering in the kitchen. They didn't know I was awake. "He's becoming forgetful," my son said, his voice cold. "It's dangerous," his wife replied. "He left the stove on again. What if the house burns down?" Lies. They twisted one small mistake into a weapon. I had burned coffee on the stove once, and they used it as evidence of my incompetence. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized the truth. My children weren't planning to care for me in my final years. They were circling me like vultures, waiting for me to fall so they could pick apart what was left. My savings, my home, my dignity. So I began to prepare. I called my lawyer. I rewrote my will. I sold investments they didn't even know I had, moving the money where no one could touch it. And I made arrangements that would ensure if they betrayed me, they wouldn't just lose my trust, they'd lose everything. Back in the present, the house buzzed with false cheer. My son stood, clinking his glass. "To family," he said. His eyes darted to mine. "And to new beginnings." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, smiling as if I believed him. but in my chest, my heart beat with quiet fury. That's when I noticed my granddaughter tugging my sleeve again. She whispered so softly, only I could hear. "Grandpa, they said they're taking you after dessert. Please don't go." My throat tightened. This little girl, my only ally, was begging me to resist, and she didn't know that resistance was exactly what I had planned, because what they didn't know was this. Tonight, they thought they were taking me away, but in truth, it was I who was about to take everything from them. I leaned down and kissed my granddaughter's forehead. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I murmured. "Grandpa knows exactly what he's doing." She didn't understand, not yet, but she would. Dessert was served. Pumpkin pie, rich and warm. My children smiled too brightly, as though sweet flavors could disguise the bitterness in their hearts. Then my son stood up again. "Dad, why don't you come with us now? We've got a surprise." I rose slowly, gripping my cane, and glanced around the house. The hardwood floors I had paid for, the chandelier I had installed, the mortgage I had saved from foreclosure. My fingerprints were everywhere in that home, yet they treated me as though I were a guest. I walked toward the door, my son holding my arm like he was doing me a favor. My granddaughter rushed forward, hugging my legs tight. "Don't go, Grandpa." Everyone laughed it off. "She's just tired," my daughter-in-law said, pulling her away. But as I stepped out into the freezing night, I smiled, because they thought they were taking me to a nursing home. They had no idea where I was about to take them. The car ride was silent at first, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. My son sat behind the wheel, his wife in the passenger seat, whispering occasionally. I sat in the back, hands folded over my cane, staring out at the frozen world sliding past the window. Snowflakes swirled in the beam of the headlights. The streets were nearly empty. "Dad," my son finally said, his voice too casual. "This place we're going, it's really nice. You'll have company, nurses to help you. You won't be lonely anymore." Lonely. The word tasted bitter. Did he forget the nights I stayed awake after his mother died, making sure he had enough money for college? Did he forget the times I worked double shifts so he could have braces, new shoes, and a car when he turned 16? Lonely. I had given him everything so he would never feel that way. I smiled faintly, but said nothing. Inside my coat pocket was a folder. They didn't know I had it. A thin envelope, sealed, containing the document that would change everything. I had placed it in the care of my lawyer, too, but I kept a copy on me for this very night. The papers inside declared something they would never see coming. Not only had I sold the house, but the money was already moved. They believed they were about to take control of my assets by controlling me. But tonight, they would discover they had no assets left to take. I closed my eyes and let the hum of the car engine mask the pounding of my heart. We pulled into a long driveway lined with bare trees. At the end of it stood a squat building with bright lights spilling from the windows. A nursing home. "This is it," my son said cheerfully. Too cheerfully. He parked and turned to face me. "Dad, it's for the best, you'll see." His wife's smile was tight, triumphant. She thought they had won. I reached for my cane and stepped out of the car slowly, deliberately. Snow crunched beneath my shoes. "Before we go inside," I said, my voice steady, "I want to give you something, a Christmas gift." Their eyes lit up. Greed. They thought it was money. I pulled the envelope from my pocket, the snowflakes catching on its surface. I handed it to my son. "Go on," I said. "Open it." He tore it open, confusion flashing across his face as he read the first lines. His wife leaned in, her eyes scanning the page. Then her smile cracked. "What is this?" she demanded. "It's the deed," I said calmly. "The house is sold, everything in it, gone. The bank accounts you counted on, emptied. The inheritance you thought you'd control, moved." My son's face went pale. You can't." "Oh, I can," I interrupted. My voice carried across the snowy night like thunder. "You thought you were putting me in a nursing home tonight. But in reality, children, I've put you out on the street." Their mouths fell open, and just then, the headlights of another car appeared, pulling up behind us. The car door opened with a sharp click, and beams from the headlights stretched long shadows across the snow. My son and his wife stiffened, shielding the envelope like it might save them. A tall man stepped out, his breath fogging in the cold night. His coat collar was turned up, and under the glow of the streetlight, I recognized him instantly. "Mr. Lawson, my lawyer." "Evening," he said smoothly, striding toward us with the calm authority of someone who knew the ground he walked on. My son's voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Lawson gave him a polite smile, the kind that carried more sharpness than kindness. "Your father asked me to meet him here tonight, to make things official. I assume you've read the documents." My daughter-in-law clutched her coat tighter, her voice trembling with anger. "This is ridiculous. He's old, he doesn't know what he's doing." Lawson adjusted his glasses, unfazed. "On the contrary, your father was very clear. The property is sold. The funds are in a trust locked, untouchable, except for him and one other beneficiary." Her face whitened. "Who?" Lawson's eyes flicked toward the car back at the house, where the faint outline of a small figure pressed against the frosted window. "My granddaughter." My son's knees almost buckled. "You didn't." "I did," I said firmly, my voice carrying years of strength I had hidden. "Every dollar, every cent I saved, every sacrifice your mother and I made, it will go to the one person in this family who still remembers what love looks like. My granddaughter." The snow seemed to swallow their silence. Their faces twisted, shock, then fury, then disbelief. "You can't just skip us," my son spat. "We're your children, and I was your father," I said quietly, the words cutting deeper than any shouted anger. "But you treated me like a burden, like a wallet with a heartbeat. I gave you everything, and you chose betrayal." My daughter-in-law's voice broke into a shrill pitch. "This isn't legal. We'll fight it in court." Lawson handed her another paper from his briefcase. "Good luck. These were notarized, witnessed, and filed weeks ago. By the time you realized what you were planning tonight, it was already too late." Her hands trembled as she crushed the paper, her anger spilling out in sobs that had nothing to do with grief, only greed. My son, though, just stood there, silent, broken. The snowflakes clung to his hair, melting against the heat of his shame. "You thought you were delivering me to a nursing home tonight," I said, stepping closer, my cane steady against the ice. "But the truth is, you've been evicted from my life." Behind us, my granddaughter slipped out the front door, her little boots crunching in the snow. She ran to me, hugging my legs, not fully understanding but sensing victory. And that was when my son snapped. My son's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. The paper shook in his hands, and for a moment he looked less like the boy I had raised and more like a stranger, his face twisted with greed and rage. "You ruined everything," he shouted, his voice echoing across the empty parking lot. "That money was ours. You can't just give it all to her." The her, in his words, wasn't my granddaughter. It was his own daughter, his own child, standing right there, clutching my leg. My granddaughter flinched, burying her face against my coat. I bent, wrapping an arm around her, shielding her from the storm of his anger. "You see," I said coldly, my voice slicing the silence, "this is why. Because even now, at your lowest, your first thought isn't your daughter's well-being, it's money." His wife hissed, tugging at his sleeve.
"Michael, stop! Not here!"
But he shook her off, eyes burning into mine.
"You've always been like this, controlling, smug, thinking you know what's best. You never trusted me, never believed in me."
I stepped forward, planting my cane firmly into the snow between us. "I believed in you, son. Every paycheck I handed over for your debts, every bill I paid, every sacrifice I made, that was belief. But belief isn't blind, and love isn't meant to be abused." Suddenly, he lunged. It wasn't a full attack, just a desperate grab, his hands reaching for the envelope, for the last scrap of hope he thought he had. But my lawyer stepped between us with surprising speed. "Enough," Mr. Lawson barked, his voice carrying the authority of a judge's gavel. "You so much as lay a hand on your father, and I'll make sure you face charges. Don't forget, everything tonight is being recorded." He tapped the pocket of his coat. A small red light blinked faintly through the fabric. A recorder. My son froze, realization dawning too late. His face crumpled, not into remorse, but into the ugly grimace of a man trapped by his own greed. My daughter-in-law dragged him back toward the car, her voice shrill, her composure gone. "We'll fight this. You can't do this to us. You'll regret it. I shook my head slowly. No. The only ones who will regret anything are you two. You lost the house. You lost the money. But worst of all, you lost your daughter's respect. And that can't be bought back. Her eyes darted to the little girl clinging to me, and for the first time that night, I saw fear flicker in her expression. She knew. Children remember the moments when their parents choose money over love. And that memory never fades. As their car engine roared and tires spat snow into the night, I stood tall despite the years weighing on my body. My granddaughter's small hand slipped into mine, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. "Grandpa," she whispered, her breath clouding in the cold. "Are you coming home with me?" I smiled, tightening my grip around her mittened fingers. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere they want me to go. From now on, I'm only going where you want me to." And just as we turned to leave with Mr. Lawson, headlights appeared again, 2 more cars pulling into the lot. The snow crunched as 2 more cars pulled into the nursing home lot, their headlights cutting through the night like blades. My son and daughter-in-law paused mid-step, their fury faltering into confusion. The first car door swung open, and out stepped my daughter. Behind her, her fiancé. Both wrapped in coats far too expensive for the lives they pretended to struggle through. The second car followed suit. My younger son climbed out, his wife at his side, their faces a mixture of smugness and guilt. For a moment, all of them just stared, like actors caught entering the wrong scene. I tightened my grip on my granddaughter's hand, my heart pounding. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't just a scheme from one child. This was all of them. My daughter spoke first, her voice sharp with false concern. "Dad, why didn't you wait at home? We were all supposed to come together to talk about your future." Her fiancé added quickly, "It's for your own good. You can't live alone anymore." I let out a bitter laugh, my breath clouding in the air. "Don't insult me. This wasn't about my safety. This was about what you could take once I was tucked away and powerless." The silence that followed was damning. None of them denied it. Mr. Lawson stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Actually, I was glad you all came. Saves me the trouble of mailing each of you the documents. You should know your father prepared for this. Not one of you is entitled to his estate." My younger son's wife sneered. "You think you can just cut us out? We're his children. That money is ours by right." Lawson's calm smile widened. "Not anymore. Every cent has been moved into a trust, legally binding. And do you know who stands as the sole future beneficiary?" He glanced down at the little girl holding my hand. Her eyes widened as she looked up at me. "Me?" she whispered. I knelt, brushing the snow from her hair. "Yes, sweetheart, you, because you're the only one who cared enough to warn me." The group erupted, shouts, accusations, frantic words colliding in the cold night air. "You manipulated him. This isn't fair. You can't leave us with nothing." I stood tall, my cane planted firmly in the snow. "I didn't leave you with nothing. You left yourselves with nothing when you abandoned love for greed." My granddaughter's small fingers squeezed mine, grounding me in a way none of my grown children ever could. And just then, Lawson pulled out one more document. "Oh, I almost forgot. You should also know, the sale of the house finalized this morning. The movers are already there. By the time you return, it'll be empty." My daughter-in-law gasped, horror twisting her face. My son's eyes darted wildly, desperate for an escape that didn't exist. And then, as if the night hadn't been heavy enough, sirens wailed in the distance. The red and blue lights grew brighter, flashing across the frozen parking lot. Snowflakes glinted like shards of glass in the glow. And for a moment, the whole world looked like it was holding its breath. 2 patrol cars pulled up, tires crunching ice. The doors opened, and uniformed officers stepped out, their boots sinking into the snow. My children fell silent. Their shouting stopped mid-sentence, replaced by a wave of unease. My daughter's fiancé slipped his hands into his pockets, his jaw tightening. My son's wife bit her lip, glancing nervously at him. "Evening," one officer said, his breath steaming in the cold. "We got a call from a Mr. Lawson." All eyes turned to my lawyer. He didn't flinch. "Yes, officer. I asked you here tonight. My client has been under duress from his family. Threats, coercion, manipulation. I thought it best to have a record of their behavior. The officer's gaze swept over my children, pausing on their guilty faces. "That true, sir?" he asked me. I nodded slowly. "It is. For months they've been circling me, trying to push me out of my home, out of my life. Tonight, they plan to abandon me here. If it weren't for my granddaughter, I wouldn't have known." The officers exchanged a look, and then one of them pulled out a small notepad. But before I could continue, Mr. Lawson cleared his throat. "There's something else," he said evenly. "During my review of Mr. Edwards's financial records, I uncovered evidence of fraudulent withdrawals, loans taken out in his name without authorization. Someone has been using his accounts." My son's face went pale. My daughter's fiancé shifted uncomfortably, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cold. The officer's tone hardened. "We'll need to see those documents." Lawson handed them over without hesitation. Pages of proof, signatures forged, transfers traced, all leading back to accounts connected to my children and their partners. You set us up," my son shouted, panic breaking through his anger. "No," I said, my voice steady, calm as the falling snow. "You set yourselves up the day you decided money mattered more than family." The officers stepped forward, hands ready. "You'll all need to come with us for questioning." My daughter shrieked, "This is insane. He's old. He doesn't know what he's saying." The officer cut her off. "Save it for the station. You're not under arrest yet, but from what I'm seeing here, that could change fast." My granddaughter pressed closer to me, her eyes wide but unafraid. I rested a hand on her shoulder. "It's all right, sweetheart. Justice has a way of finding its way home." As my children were led toward the police cars, shouting and pleading, I stood still in the snow, watching the illusion of their power crumble. They thought I was weak. They thought I was disposable. But tonight, the truth came crashing down, and it was beautiful. And yet, even as the police lights painted the night in fire, I knew this wasn't the end. Because there was still one thing left to reveal. The police cars idled, their engines humming against the bitter winter air. My children huddled together, their voices rising in desperate whispers as the officers gathered documents and prepared to escort them away. Mr. Lawson turned to me. "Well, sir, I'd say your plan worked perfectly. You've secured the trust, your granddaughter's future, and their betrayal is recorded for the world to see." I nodded but didn't smile. Not yet. Because there was one piece left. A truth I hadn't shared with anyone. Not even him. I looked down at my granddaughter, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her small hands still clutching mine as though I were her anchor in a storm. "Sweetheart," I said softly, kneeling so we were eye to eye. "Do you know what happens when someone shows kindness, even when the world around them forgets what it means?" She shook her head, her eyes wide. "They become the keeper of a legacy." From inside my coat, I pulled a second envelope. This one was heavier, sealed with wax. I placed it in her mittened hands. "What's this?" she asked, voice trembling. I smiled. "It's the second part of my plan. The trust is yours, yes, but so is something more. That envelope contains letters, deeds, and instructions. Not just money, a future, a home that will always be safe, a foundation built on love, not greed." Her eyes sparkled, though she didn't fully understand. One day, she would. Mr. Lawson blinked, clearly surprised. "I didn't prepare those documents." "No," I said firmly, standing tall again. "I prepared them myself. Some things aren't about lawyers or courts. Some things are about promises." And I promised her, promised myself, that love would not die with me. Behind us, my children shouted as the officers guided them into the squad cars. Their voices echoed with anger, denial, desperation. But for once, their noise didn't matter. What mattered was the girl holding that envelope, the girl who had chosen honesty over silence, love over betrayal. Snow began to fall harder, swirling around us like confetti at the end of a long play. My granddaughter leaned into me, her head resting against my coat. "Grandpa," she whispered, "does this mean we'll always be together?" I kissed the top of her head, my heart finally at peace. "Yes, sweetheart, always. Because family isn't about blood, it's about love. And love doesn't abandon, not ever." As the police cars drove away, their lights fading into the distance, I realized something profound. Christmas had been stolen from me once, by greed, by betrayal, by the cold hearts of my own children. But tonight, in the arms of my granddaughter, I had taken it back. So remember this. Family can betray you, money can tempt you, but love, real love, cannot be bought, stolen, or broken. Guard it, cherish it, because in the end, it's the only inheritance that truly matters. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, what does family mean to you?